Affair to Remember is a 1999 film. This is directed by James Yukich, written by Robert Reece, and it stars Malcolm-Jamal Warner as Winter and Challen Cates as Tamara. We also have John Ratzenberger as a character called Mickey, and it's because of Ratzenberger that I became aware of this. I probably would have discovered it eventually, largely because it is my mission to try and watch every Christmas feature film ever, and when I discovered Ratzenberger was in this, I thought, let's give it a go. I love Christmas films. Unfortunately, I didn't enjoy this. Part of that's down to personal preference. Part of it, I think, is a little bit more objective, hopefully. But I won't spoil it for the most part, just in case you do decide to watch it. For example, if you're a Ratzenberger fan, check it out. He's in it not that much, but his scenes were okay. But one of the reasons I didn't like it is definitely a spoiler. So I'll save that for the end, but for the most part, it will be spoiler-free. And the film is about our protagonist, Tamara, who needs to get a cab from Seattle to LA. This is set around Christmas, but to be honest, apart from the tinsel in the cab and the music, this could be set any time of year. It doesn't really feel like a Christmas film. If you like your Christmas films to have only the bare minimum Christmas, I know not everybody likes sickly sweet Christmas films. It will appeal to you more. But if, like me, when you watch a Christmas film, you want there to be a lot of Christmas in it, that's not so much the case here. But that's not one of the reasons why I didn't like it. It's just worth bearing in mind that if you're in the mood for a Christmassy Christmas film, this is not going to be it. And obviously that's quite a distance that Tamara needs to travel, and she's getting married. She has to be there in time, but she can't take a flight. So she ends up getting in a taxi driven by Winter. And we do have a nice bit of setting things up, credit where it's due. It's not just that she found a random taxi driver and asked if he'd take her to LA. They have a bit more of a backstory. It doesn't take too long to set things up. I think the initial pacing was quite good, but we do get a bit more of a story around their early relationship and why Winter ultimately agreed to do this journey, which I thought was a good decision, because it probably wouldn't have been that believable if she just found a random cab driver and on their first interaction said, will you take me to LA? So that I appreciated. I thought that worked quite well. And then pretty much the rest of the film is them going to LA. And this is the bit that was never really going to appeal to me personally. I don't care for road trip films. There are exceptions. This is not one of them. We spent so much time in the car, and obviously that makes sense within the context of the narrative, but that meant that it was so boring. It relied heavily on the characters because the action itself was significantly lacking. We do stop every now and then and we meet other characters very briefly. One of those characters was John Ratzenberger's character, but most of it is set in or around the car, and I just found it to be so dull. And yes, it is more character-driven than narrative-driven. And Winter, I actually thought was brilliant. I actually really liked his personality. I really took to him very quickly. I kind of hated Tamara. She's very self-centered. She doesn't really think about anybody else. Throughout the entire film, the world is revolving around her. And yes, it's her story. She is going from one place to the other to get to her wedding. But it seems like she's got a strong disregard for anybody else. And I really hated her. So I genuinely couldn't care less about her story. And since it's relying heavily on liking her character and following her story, that's a bit of a problem. So the road trip aspect, yes, that's definitely on me for not liking that. But Tamara is such an unlikable character. And I feel like you really need to like her to get behind this. Winter, I really did like. So 50% of the main characters, not too bad, but I really had a strong dislike for Tamara throughout the entire thing, and that meant it was exceptionally irritating. It is, of course, very slow. As I said, the beginning was not too bad, the pacing was quite good, and then the bulk of the rest of the film, it's about an hour and 40 minutes, it is tremendously slow. And really, not a lot happens. And I did not enjoy it. And there's not really a lot of Christmas in it. And 50% of the characters are really unlikable. So unfortunately, it didn't work for me. And I will tell you the other reason why I didn't like it in a moment. But it is a spoiler. Do I recommend it? Only if either you really love road trip films or there's somebody in the cast for whom you'd like to watch this. I don't regret having seen it, because, well, as I said, I'm trying to watch every Christmas feature film, but also John Ratzenberger, so I don't regret having seen it, but at the same time, I would never watch it again. It's not something I'd like to sit through a second time. If there is a strong factor pulling you towards this, give it a go. But if you're just looking for a Christmas film with some nice festivities, a good narrative, and likeable characters, it's probably worth avoiding. So I will now tell you the other thing that made me really, really dislike this film. This is a huge spoiler for something that happens. So this thing is, well, it's the ending. It's the entire ending. And the thing about Winter being a writer, being the writer, I thought was, I didn't hate that bit, but it felt forced. It felt a little too convenient, and I just didn't like it. But the actual ending and Tamara's wedding, it just felt so unbelievable and so unrealistic. And there was nothing really, in my opinion, or not enough, setting us up for that. It kind of just didn't work for me. So I really found the film boring, and I really hated the ending. So I wasn't left with a smile on my face, unfortunately. Affair to Remember, for me, is not a good film. I think there are too many elements that just don't work very well. So I'm not going to recommend it unless, like I said, there is something really, really drawing you to this. Otherwise, I'd say it's probably not worth it.